Wow, I mean, yikes. China has voter data. So do we. This is about 1% of it in 2 counties. More on that in a dissection of the president's big election speech. The Washington Post is not a character on CSI, but it did forensic reporting on the troubled reflecting pool. Seems it's all about bad seam work. Let us consider the parasite causing thousands of cases of nasty intestinal sickness. It lurks in lettuce. The feds have identified one source and will tell you what we know. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. President Trump has been lighting a fire of falsehoods about the 2020 election relentlessly promising evidence of provable, malevolent fraud. He never has, because it does not exist. Last night, Trump talked about vulnerabilities. We will discuss them and the comparative risks they pose. But this administration, now 18 months deep into its second term, has found nothing to show or even hint that a single vote in America has been altered, a single election outcome manipulated. An administration, we should remind ourselves, willing to charge a former FBI director over seashells and a former Olympian over something that may or may not have happened at the reflecting pool, has charged no one, not a single person, with election theft. The swarms of agents sent on a flimsy basis to Fulton County, Georgia, have found nothing. Promises of revelations about cheating and fraud and elections upended via conspiracies, well, they've turned out to be so empty, so vaporous, they can't even be called vapid. Trump said the nation is beset by catastrophic election vulnerabilities. Really? Does that mean his 2024 election and the House and Senate GOP majorities that arose from it are now illegitimate? How about every GOP primary winner this year, most backed by Trump, victors in a system that can't be trusted? Come on. You know the answer. I would like to say, when it comes to elections, Trump is a serious, circumspect person who would never lie to the country. You would like to believe that. But we are sentient beings, and therefore we can't. So let's talk vulnerabilities. 220 million voter rolls from 2020 to 2023, the administration asserts, have been compromised. Sounds scary. Does that mean infiltrated, manipulated, or altered? The administration says no. Compromised means basically in possession of. China has voter rolls, which in many states can be purchased for a small fee. In some states, you can Google them. Here is 1% of voter roll data from Columbia County, North Carolina. Over here, 1% of voter data from Adams County, Ohio. Free, downloadable. The administration scares you more by suggesting voter rolls are like bank accounts or what has been hacked from Equifax. Not the same. Public voter rolls have no highly sensitive personal or financial data. None. Lastly, having access does not mean a vote can be changed or altered within the database to prevent someone from voting. Again, all of this sounds scary and isn't. Non-citizens on the rolls, again, sounds scary. How many? Well, from 12 states, the administration says there appears there might be 28,000. The administration then extrapolates that number to possibly 250,000 nationwide out of, in 2024, 174 million registered voters. But that 250,000 number is a plain guesstimate. It would never hold up in court. Even the 28,000 number is suspect because the Department of Homeland Security admits its citizenship data is incomplete. These are guesses in shadows, grains of sand in the great gears of our democracy. This then is a horror movie with no monster. No Michael Myers with that big fat knife. No Jason Voorhees terrorizing summer camps. No Freddy Krueger killing victims in their dreams. No Scream guy with that warpy mask. No Pennywise peeking out of the sewer. There's a soundtrack, but no serial killer. More like soggy cereal. One other thing. If this system is as vulnerable as the president suggests, that is an indictment of 23 states in which 41% of Americans live, all where the governor and the state legislative majorities are Republican. And what are the 11 states where Republicans have some control of state government? All asleep at the wheel, all fiddling while the vulnerability fires burn? I ask again, is that all there is to a fire? Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me here at the family table. Ed, great to have you.
Good to see you.
So, the president said many things last night, and the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen followed up today. Where are we?
Well, what he said today, in essence, was you've got those 23 states, Republican-controlled, who have in one way or another now shared or said they're going to adopt the national standards the president would like to see. But to the other states, in essence, they've warned them that should we find irregularities, you, state and local election officials now could be subject to arrest for failing to adhere to our standards and sort of hear our warnings or the flags that we sent you. Now, we've heard from the secretaries of state today from Pennsylvania and Nevada, both of whom have said—
And California.
Who've essentially said, we've yet to see what it is Homeland Security
They've sent us nothing
so far.
We'd like to review it.
And that we follow the law and that we have found no evidence of widespread fraud or manipulation or anything that would have upended the results in any meaningful way in the past. And, you know, the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania is a Republican who said nothing to see here. Same out in Nevada and California, Democrats, but they said nothing to see here. And as we have reported for years, there is, in essence, nothing to see here. Are there examples of non-citizens making on there? Yes. Are there examples of dead people voting? Yes, because they cast an absentee ballot before they died. You know, so you can say all these things, but it may be something else. And it may be that there's faulty information in the system. But, boy, they're going to try to exploit it as much as they can.
And the administration went to pains last night saying all of the intelligence leaders signed off on the president's remarks.
Right.
I would just remind our audience, there have been other instances in American history in which intelligence leaders have signed off on things, and they haven't turned out so well.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily prove anything. It just means the president turned to his people, they vetted it, and he read what they said was okay.
Yes, yes. And look, this is, as we discussed last night, as we've discussed throughout the day today, this is a personal concern, some would say obsession of the president. He is surrounded by people who are willing to stoke or promote those concerns or obsessions. And he does this in the hope that it reminds his base, you put me in this position in part because of my concerns about this, and I'm still working on it.
And Ed, there was some reporting today that White House officials were saying privately this could have been crazier.
Yes, yes. And in fact, based on some of the reporting CBS did in the lead up to this, there were indications that there were certain things that might have been said or done that were not. But you got to remember, you've seen virtually no, outside of the most Republican or the most MAGA of lawmakers, you haven't seen today widespread campaign trail discussion by Republican candidates. Right. Because they understand, and they remember, for example, what happened with those Georgia runoffs back in 2020. It led to 2 Democratic senators because the Republican voters stayed home. So this has the potential to suppress and confuse and keep people from voting for Republican candidates this fall, which is part of why you've seen them be somewhat quiet, at least so far today.
And it has the possibility, at least, the theoretical possibility of antagonizing Democrats already sufficiently fired up.
And especially down in Georgia, we've seen John Ossoff do it. We've seen the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer try to stoke this because he understands it's good for the base for them, because it's a reminder to Democrats to turn out and vote.
Appreciate having you here. Thanks so very much. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, your friend and mine, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now with even more stacks of voter ID records. Explain, Anthony, explain.
They say you shouldn't, one-up the host, Major, but the gang
you one-up all you want.
Has clearly worked harder to print out. Look, these are even more voter files, but it does illustrate the point. These from North Carolina, that these are available. And let me show you or tell you how these are used and how they're not. For our viewers out there, if you've ever gotten a phone call from a campaign saying, vote for this candidate or turn out to vote, if you've ever had a knock on the door from a campaign or a canvasser saying, hey, would you turn out to vote? Chances are the campaign, as almost all do, got the voter rolls, and they use that to print out maps of the precincts or the neighborhoods where they're going to canvass. I made a map from the voter file here. It's via L2, which is a commercially available system for it. And that's the entire United States by household. That's why you don't see county breaks. You see it as individual households. The point being that this data is out there, and in many ways, it's kind of the lifeblood of politics and discourse and data. Frankly, for pollsters, good pollsters use it to sample or to reach out to people directly, and that's used all over. What it doesn't do, though, is just because you have a list doesn't mean you can go and change anything. You get the list to the, in the same way that I could get the roster for the Chicago Cubs, but I cannot play for the Cubs. So it's just information, and what you do with it is part of the political discourse, Major.
And Anthony, I think our viewers might also be interested to know that this data helps us in our modeling when we are on election night, when you and I have been together at the big board, because if I understand it, this helps us in the modeling of past behavior, future behavior, and that is something that helps not only us, but others in the business of evaluating an election as results come in, which helps everyone involved understand what's happening.
And helps us understand it. We can look back and look at turnout. Every time you'll see me come on here and talk about a CBS News poll of likely voters, I've got voters' past history in there in the model, which helps us describe who might be likely to turn out. So all of that promotes understanding as well as, of course, looking at the demographics of where people vote and where they don't. So it is, again, part of our discourse, and it's information that's out there. From big data, we get a lot of info, Major.
One more time, Anthony, hold up the big stack so I can show our audience the cartridges sacrificed, the trees also sacrificed to make our point that this is readily available data. Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much.
You got it, man.
I want to bring in CBS News election law expert David Becker. David, always great to have you here. Also, just a quick note, 4 guests, no one with a necktie. That is absolutely spectacular here at the Takeout. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen said, hey, you know what? We should have more paper ballots in America today. That's one of the things he said would help us remedy these vulnerabilities. David, what are the stats there?
What a great idea. I mean, what if Americans voted on paper ballots? I wonder if anyone's
thought of this.
I mean, the federal government, once again, coming to the rescue of the states who constitutionally run elections. The reality is 98% of people vote on paper ballots in the United States.
What state is the holdout?
Only Louisiana. They've had some issues. It is a red state. They've had some issues with their vendor trying to get a new system in. I think they'll have it by 2028. Every other state, paper ballot systems, which is important because one of the other recommendations, as you know, that Secretary Mullen said, is that states should also do audits of these ballots. Well, NCSL, the National Conference on State Legislatures, reported earlier this year that literally every state does audits. The states are way out ahead of this particular administration in terms of the security they've been providing. And as you ably pointed out before, that's why we know the 2020, 22, 24 elections were all secure and the outcomes were correct.
And when the president talks about compromised voter roll data, how should people think about what that term means and what it doesn't mean?
I'm wondering if the feds are going to come in right now and confiscate this, and looking for a Salvanto as well. I mean, the reality is voter data is widely available. We know that China is collecting data on Americans. This is an issue.
And other foreign adversaries.
Yeah, this is a definite issue. It should be addressed in some way. But probably the least concerning data they're collecting is the voter data, because it's already public. The Trump campaign has it. The RNC has it. Democrats as well. Everyone has this data. You literally went on the internet today and were able to download what you wanted from several counties.
How about this question of non-citizens?
So the administration has been bringing up this issue of non-citizens as if it was a widespread problem. And it's true. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote in federal elections. That's federal law. And the states do a very good job of keeping non-citizens off the lists. They do that through their interactions with their motor vehicles agencies, usually with Real ID, where you have to show proof of legal presence. That's usually proof of citizenship. Or it might be a work visa or something else that proves non-citizenship, in which case you shouldn't be registered to vote. States have the best data on this. And when the federal government has gone looking for this massive amount of non-citizens, they have found shockingly few. That 68 million number that was mentioned last night, they compared that to their incomplete data, as you mentioned, in the federal SAVE system, and found only 28,000. 0.04%. And that's not people who are provably non-citizens. Those are the people who they could not confirm whether or not they were citizens.
That's an important distinction.
Right. And my organization has put out research on this, looked at these as they've investigated them further. These numbers shrink way, way down when you actually start asking these people, are they citizens? Were they naturalized? And you find that we have a very, very small number. Hardly anyone votes as a non-citizen or registers to vote because they will be subject to deportation, let alone prosecution. The administration is very proud of the fact that they're deporting people who have been registered as non-citizens.
The point being, in this climate, they're even less likely to show up.
Why would you paint a bullseye on yourself just for the right to cast a single ballot?
David Becker, always appreciate it. Thank you so much. Stephen Richard joins us now. He was an election official in Maricopa County, Arizona from 2021 to 2025 as a Republican. Stephen, always good to have you. Great to see you again. You wrote a piece for the Dispatch today in which you said, among the biggest surprise to you and what the president said last night, the documents shared by the White House, and I'm quoting you directly, in real time refuted or failed to support the president's speech. Wow. How?
Yeah, I was very surprised when I actually went through the documents, which I hope more Americans will do. The Trump administration and the president in his speech presented these documents as if they were going to be bombshells. But if anything, they undermined exactly what the president was saying. In fact, they've been making a lot of the points that you and David were just making in those documents. They say that it would be very hard to have mass fraud across the country because so many systems are closed off, so many systems aren't connected to the internet, and America uses paper ballots and we have post-election audits. And so this was recognized by the security professionals that President Trump was relying on. And the most shocking thing about this is this was Trump's opening punch. This was his opening salvo. And surely I thought he was going to give us his best documents. And if these are his best documents, then it's going to get really bad for the president and his allegations of mass fraud in American elections.
And Stephen, do my audience the benefit of recalling, though it was traumatic for you and many in Maricopa County, what it was like after 2020?
Well, I think for a lot of people, this is just a political game. And this is all just noise. And yeah, politicians lie, but they're always lying. So what does it matter? And I'll tell you that it matters for a number of reasons. One, it materially decreases the trust of average Americans who might drop out of the system. But two, I've seen the downstream effects of what it means when election workers are interacting with voters. It gets much more confrontational. And that leads to questions, that leads to shouting, that leads to disruptions in voting locations. But eventually, it even leads to death threats. It leads to physical interactions where there's confrontations. And it leads to, in my county, in Maricopa County, spending millions of dollars to secure our facility after all of the rigmarole as a fallout from the 2020 election. So there are real consequences for real human beings as a result of these lies.
As you know, Stephen, part of what the president pointed to last night or hinted at is that no one really in America at the state level calls the question on the incidence of non-citizens voting. But in your piece for the Dispatch, you talk about a survey, rigorous survey done in Utah of more than 2 million registered voters. Utah found 27 confirmed non-citizens, 12 of whom voted in the November 2020 election. Michigan reported in its detailed audit of Macomb County, one county in Michigan, some 725,000 registered voters. It found 4 apparent non-citizens on their rolls, 1 who voted. So states do pay attention to this.
Absolutely. And over the last few years, we've seen a number of affirmative investigations by the states who have that data at their disposal, just as David mentioned, and they've looked at their entire voter rolls. And the returns that they have had have been wildly inconsistent with what the president reported last night. And that's why, just like you, just like David, I want to see the work behind the president's allegation. But if you go into the data file on the White House website and you look up, okay, show me how you got to 250,000 plus non-citizens who are registered in these 4 states. Well, all they have is a paragraph or two that just says they ran it through the federal SAVE program and they found that out. And I guess call me skeptical, but I'm going to need more than that in order to substantiate such a significant claim that is so inconsistent with the audits that have been recently done by red states and blue states into their own voter rolls.
Stephen Richer, I appreciate the time, sir, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come, a Washington Post investigation on what led to the damage, or was it vandalism or shoddy work at the reflecting pool? Plus, an outbreak of a parasite has been linked to Taco Bell lettuce. Dr. Celine Gounder will break down how widespread this problem is and how it is being tracked and how well it's being tracked. Finally, the World Cup comes to an end Sunday. What Argentina needs to do to repeat. And does anyone care about that third-place game Saturday? Well, I sort of do. Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. The reflecting pool at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial drained this week, so crews could work on sections of it that are not working out well. This installed lining that's blue is turned gray. The pool's floor began peeling shortly after the Trump administration scrambled to renovate the reflecting pool to have it ready for the 250th anniversary celebration on 4th of July. That was done at a cost of $16 million, much more than the original expectations and projections. In a Truth Social post today, President Trump said it was badly damaged by deranged vandals. And they're now looking for more to install, vandal-proof material. That's another quote. Interestingly, a Washington Post analysis published this week, forensic and otherwise, found what experts say is the actual cause of the damage. It has nothing to do, those experts said, with vandalism. Joining me now, one of the reporters behind this analysis, visual forensics reporter at the Washington Post, Jarrett Lay. Jarrett, I'm glad to have you on the program. What did you find and what did experts tell you about the likely culprit here?
Hi, Major. Thank you for having me. My colleagues and I found that all 7 locations where the coating is failing align with seams that were forged during the application process when one rectangular patch of coating was put down next to another. We brought this to 4 experts in underwater proofing who said that while no precise diagnosis can be made without lab testing and on-site visits, that this is highly indicative of an application failure as the seams are ripe for failure.
And as I read your piece and others in this space, Jarrett, seams are oftentimes the most vulnerable part of any kind of work like this. Everyone who works in this space knows that. You have to do extra things and be right on pace with timing of one thing or another or preparation. Any house painter even knows that.
Yes, the many experts in underwater coating who generously spoke with us for this piece make clear that when you're dealing with a project that is this big, I mean, this is a fountain that is upwards of 300,000 square feet, you have to be very deliberate about the way that you time the application of your coating in segments so that your seams can be managed. Now, experts gave us different points of possibility for how those seams might be managed appropriately given the technical specifications of the materials and the project at hand, but all of them were consistent in telling us that these are indeed highly vulnerable spots in the application process.
And you took lots of pictures and you had some time sequencing of that. What about these gashes, this 350-foot gash the president keeps talking about, alleging that that is straight up proof of vandalism?
We've been unable to identify that, and when we sent when we asked for comment from the White House and the Department of Interior, they did not provide us with additional evidence of the charges of vandalism that they are blaming this incident and incidences on.
The experts you talked to, Jared, is this a fixable situation?
Yes, this is something that, there are a lot of smart people out there who are going to be able to recode this. It will be cumbersome and precise, but it's fixable, yes.
And in reading your piece, Jared, one company, I believe in New Jersey, that was involved in previous work here passed on doing the work, even though it had a lot of experience with this exact place, because
That's
the
correct,
time
yes.
horizon was too rushed from their perspective, if I had that correctly.
That is correct. That is what we reported.
And that is, from your reporting, sort of indicative about maybe one of the origin story problems here, that there was a rush to get this work done, and maybe in the rush, even well-intentioned people didn't get it quite done as well as they could have.
Our reporting doesn't necessarily implicate that these potential application failures were due to a rush. But what it does make clear is that the visual evidence points to the likelihood that the reason we're seeing this dark American blue peel up from the bottom of the reflecting pool probably has to do with the construction process and the highly technical and series of details that need to be managed while applying the multiple layers that went down in this project.
Jarrett Lay of the Washington Post, I appreciate the time very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Major.
The CD says to avoid Taco Bell lettuce. For now, what we know about multi-state intestinal sickness. It doesn't sound good at all, and it isn't. More on that when we come back. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Here's a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. Now it's Andy's turn at the British Prime Minister wheel. Andy who? Andy Burnham is the new leader of Britain's Labour Party and will become Prime Minister on Monday. Good luck. He will be the UK's 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. Brexit turbulence is part of that story. Outgoing Prime Minister Keir Starmer resigned following internal pressure after suffering significant losses in local elections. The death toll, we are sorry to tell you, from last month's earthquakes in Venezuela has now reached 5,000. At least 16,000 additional people were injured in those quakes. You might remember 2 earthquakes struck the northwestern and central parts of Venezuela in and around its capital, Caracas, on June 24th. The United States, United Nations, and various international aid groups are doing their best to assist in recovery efforts. It's a huge task. A produce supplier is voluntarily recalling iceberg lettuce that sickened thousands of people across the country. Source tells CBS News the lettuce in question came from Mexico and supplied by the agricultural giant known as Taylor Farms. Based in Salinas, California, the company supplies produce to many fast food restaurants and sells packaged produce to stores like Walmart and Target. Officials say packaged products are not affected. CBS News medical correspondent Celine Gounder has been following this story for us. She's also editor-at-large for public health at KFF News. Doctor, what did we learn today?
So the CDC has confirmed that shredded iceberg lettuce served at Taco Bell in 5 different states, so Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and West Virginia, is behind the cyclospora outbreak. The FDA has traced it to the single supplier, Taylor Farms in California, and it's focused on a Taylor Farms farm in Mexico that grew the lettuce, as well as a plant nearby that shredded it. And as you noted, Taylor Farms is voluntarily pulling this product.
So, lettuce, safe to eat now, yes or no?
Well, the investigation remains active, and additional states, restaurants, retailers may be identified, even products may be identified as more information becomes available. So I wouldn't say we're, quote, out of the woods yet. More remains to be seen. But big picture, Taylor Farms is a massive distributor. They work through different food distributors who in turn sell the produce to restaurants and grocery stores. It's very difficult to trace some of that. They don't publicly share information about their sales to distributors, retailers, and restaurants. So it's not transparent to the public exactly where their products show up.
Has Taylor Farms had issues like this before?
More than once. The supplier was tied to a cyclospora outbreak in 2013, as well as an E. coli outbreak involving McDonald's onions in 2024. Some folks may remember that. Last year, lawsuits identified it as the source of a deadly romaine lettuce E. coli outbreak that the FDA investigated but didn't disclose. Taylor Farms denies that one.
So what should we think about, Dr. Gounder, the FDA and CDC in this process?
Yeah, that's a really important point. The real fix here is better rules and testing, which is on the FDA and the CDC. So this parasite spreads when human waste gets into the water used to irrigate crops, for example. And farm workers, whether they're in the US or abroad, need proper restroom and sanitation facilities when on the job so that these contamination events don't occur. There's also a bill moving through Congress right now that decides much of how to fund food safety programs in the United States. The House just gave FDA's food safety budget a small bump, but that barely restores the money and staff that got cut with the DOGE cuts last year.
Very quickly, Dr. Gounder. So if I wash my lettuce, I'm okay. True or false?
False. Water, even if you're using high pressure rinsing your fruits and vegetables, that is not enough. The things that are really foolproof are either cooking or peeling the fruits and vegetables. And unfortunately, you can't really do either with lettuce.
Dr. Celine Gounder, great stuff as always. Thank you for your time. President Trump this afternoon urged Darline Graham, sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham, to run for a full term in the Senate. What started as a temporary appointment now has a Trump endorsement if Darline makes a race of it. That could box out a fair number of South Carolina Republicans. Our reporter panel reacts. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to Takeout. Reporter panel time. I love it. Reporters are so great to hang out with. Bloomberg TV's Washington correspondent Tyler Kendall. Good grief. Politics and policy reporter for Notice. Remember, that's News of the U.S., Oriana Gonzalez. All right, filed under, that was quick. Darline Graham goes from placeholder to now Trump endorsed. All South Carolina is waiting for her is for her to say, I'm going to run for the full 6-year term. That was really quick, Oriana.
Yeah, and
it's going to box out a lot of South Carolina Republicans who were thinking about running.
Oh, absolutely. I'll say first thing I'll say is that my colleagues Kadiagoba, Reese Gorman were the ones that broke the news.
Great, fantastic. Credit where credit's due.
Then he confirmed it. But to your point, exactly. I mean, we knew that Ralph Norman, Nancy Mace, potentially Russell Fry was seen as a favorite. Yes, Russell Fry was seen as a favorite for Trump initially. I don't know what happens here now. Once she announces, does that mean that they're just, well, I just have to wait my turn another 6 years to see if I can run again?
Or challenge the president and the power of his endorsement in a very short-term primary.
And this, of course, holds enormous weight, considering whoever wins this primary that's set up August 11th, they're going to very likely end up winning that seat.
They would be the odds-on favorite, yes.
Considering that Lindsey Graham had held this seat since 2002. But I think that this is going to raise a lot more scrutiny on Darline Graham's positions, considering she had been considered to be the caretaker of this seat until January. And there have been big questions about who's going to fill perhaps some of those policy positions on the Hill from Senator Lindsey Graham, perhaps most notably that he was a major foreign policy hawk, some of the staunchest supporter of the Trump administration's position when it comes to Iran.
Right.
And perhaps those were some of the conversations that happened behind closed doors between President Trump and Darline Graham before this endorsement.
Exactly. We just don't know what happened, but it went from placeholder where everyone else can compete to now anointed one, and everyone else has to make another completely different calculus. It's odd. So last night there was the first, and there'll be another debate among Democrats scrambling to become the state party nominee to replace Graham Plattner as the Senate nominee in Maine. Here's a bit of flavor from last night's debate.
When I say we have to abolish it, what I mean is that we need a new law enforcement agency that has the trust of the people.
I remember a day when the thugs weren't in the government and they didn't have arms.
They need to be dismantled because they give us nothing in this country but heartache and racism.
I don't think this agency can be reformed. The rot has gone to the core, and that's why we must abolish it.
The topic there, obviously, immigration, customs, and enforcement in reaction to a fatal shooting in Biddeford, Maine. This was one of the many issues, but it's a big scramble, Oriana, in Maine to try to figure out who can define themselves in a very short period of time to capture that nomination.
Oh, it's huge. And,
the state convention will decide it.
Precisely. And I was going to say something that caught my eye when I was watching the debate was there were a couple times that, for example, Shaw really kind of echoed Graham Plattner's ideas here. So I was like, okay, he's definitely appealing to that part of the base. And then other instances in which, for example, actually, I thought about this with Troy Jackson and particularly with Bellows. There were certain points that they were asked about policy ideas and they couldn't give exact policy ideas, or they were asked about Venezuela and they said that they wanted to read more about it before they said anything. And that says two things. One, how fast, this has gone. Like they haven't even had enough time to prepare. But two, these are essential questions that people are wondering about and their positions. And they do have to come up with it quick.
And Tyler, it's a very steep learning curve, number one. Number two, in many instances, not all, these folks tried and were washed out in the Graham Plattner phenom. And now they're having to vie very rapidly and grab attention and build some sort of fire beneath their quick candidacy.
Very rapidly in what is considered to be one of the most competitive Senate races, the context here being that Democrats only need a net gain of 4 seats, and this had really been a target for them, considering that we know that there had been this push against the incumbent Senator Susan Collins, who's now seeking her 6th term. But it's so interesting because one of the most competitive races, and Republicans don't even know who they're running against, but the longer it takes Democrats to coalesce around a candidate, the more at a disadvantage they're going to be when it comes to fundraising. I just pulled the most recent numbers. Outside Republican groups on track to spend $58 million between now and election days.
And that goes a very long way in a state like Maine. Tyler, I want to talk to you about China and the president's speech last night because there was all this conversation about lurking and compromise and they're a threat. And yet the president speaks routinely in very glowing terms about Xi Jinping. Nothing in the speech about tariffs, nothing in the speech about TikTok or clawing anything back from the Chinese government. So if it's such a big deal, why the absence of anything that would suggest challenging China on a policy basis because of this intrusion?
That is a really key point here. We didn't see concrete policy or what sort of ramification or consequence President Trump would want to see from China in regard to these election interference claims. It does, though, threaten to strain what has been fragile truce between the two countries since President Trump came back from that visit to Beijing with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
And there's still one on the schedule for this fall, is there not, for Xi Jinping to come here?
Exactly. So these allegations coming ahead of that expected meeting in September, as well as the midterm elections. Now, what we can say is that it does add to what has been growing tensions, if you will, when it comes to trade, when it comes to technology related to AI. I just caught up with the Palantir CTO, a top technology official who told me that he thinks that Chinese artificial intelligence companies are stealing American IP. So there are a lot of different threads. I think it's fair to say these claims from President Trump are setting up a contentious meeting this fall.
Oriana, you had some great reporting on abortion and Democrats in the midterm. 2022, huge issue, very front forward. Same thing in 2024. Less so this time around.
It's almost not present at all this time around. I mean, I really started thinking about this with Diana DeGette. She's the top House Democrat.
In Colorado, right?
Exactly. She's the top House Democrat on abortion rights. She's the co-chair, longtime co-chair of the pro-choice caucus. She lost her re-election. So that moment to me marked, okay, here's someone that really one of her main issues is abortion, one of her key legislative priorities. And that didn't matter.
In a Democratic primary.
And I'm not saying it was, detrimental to her or that it, ruined her position, but it just shows how much this anti-establishment sentiment is and how much that outweighs every other policy issue.
It's a consideration, but it is not at the center of messaging or campaign orientation. Great stuff. Tyler Kendall, Bloomberg TV, Oriana Gonzalez, Notice, thank you so much. We are less than 48 hours from the most watched sporting event in the world. 2 billion people going to watch the World Cup final. Argentina, Spain. Likely Messi's last stand. It's going to be epic. We'll talk about it here on The Takeout. Welcome back to Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. Sometimes this is true. It's hard for fans to breathe when watching a World Cup final. It's so dramatic. Well, breathing might be a problem for players in Sunday's match, as air quality warnings in New York and New Jersey have prompted some internal safety discussions within FIFA. Sasha Kleshchin joins me now. He's a former professional soccer player and currently a Major League Soccer analyst. Sasha, great to have you on the program. You've played this game. How big a concern do you think it might be if air quality is as bad as it has recently been in the New York, New Jersey area?
Well, I think we all have our fingers crossed that this air is going to clean up a little bit, hopefully with some rain tomorrow. Obviously, if it doesn't, I do think it's a concern. Are they going to change the game? I doubt it. There's too much riding on this. There's too much going on. It's the World Cup final. I don't see how they could move the game or do anything like that at this point. But yeah, it would affect the game in a negative way. I think it slows the game down, and that would not be fun for anybody to watch.
Talk about what it means for a player when the air quality is bad, breathing as much, running as much as you are in a match of this intensity.
Yeah, listen, it's not going to be fun for anybody who's playing the game. And when I say slow it down, yeah, it's going to be harder on the players. They're going to get tired easy. And it's going to be hot regardless, right? It's New York in the summertime. The game's already going to be hot and humid outside. And to throw in the bad weather, it's going to make the game slower. I don't know who that favors. Probably Argentina, if I'm really thinking about it, because Spain wants to play a quick game with a lot of passing on the ground. Argentina can muck it up a little bit.
Sasha, diagram the game more fully than you just did. You gave us a little bit of a preview, but break it down for my audience. What to watch for?
Okay, so Spain is the best team in the tournament. They've been that, from the beginning till the end. And when I say best team, best group of players, the style of play, they keep possession. As soon as they lose the ball, they win it right back. They've only given up one goal in the entire tournament. That's absurd. So their defending starts with their possession. And then Argentina, they have Lionel Messi, the best player of all time. And they've been losing or tied in every game of the knockout round, and it's been teetering on the edge. And Messi has found a way to drag his team to victory. And I've learned after covering Messi for the past 3 years and watching him play for 20 years to never bet against Messi. He always makes you look like a fool.
Sasha, talk to me about this photo that is the photo of all photos for this World Cup. Messi, I believe he's 20 years old, with the now best player on the Spain team. There's the picture right there.
It's fate. Yeah, it's fate. That's Lamine Yamal as a baby. His family won a raffle to be included in this photo shoot with Lionel Messi, and now they will face off, this Sunday in a World Cup final. Lamine Yamal also plays for FC Barcelona, the team that Lionel Messi made his name with for many years, and everybody sees him as the heir apparent, the next best player in the world, and he's 19 years old, just like Messi was in his first World Cup. It's fate, it's destiny that these two will line up on the field on Sunday.
15 seconds. Does anyone care about the third place game?
I'll tell you, there's a couple of players who care about the third place game. It's Kylian Mbappe, who's going for the golden boot. So he's tied with Messi right now on 8 goals. I can bet everything that he's going to be gunning for a hat trick tomorrow. And then you've got Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane, who also have an outside chance of winning the golden boot if one of them can put up a hat trick tomorrow.
Sasha Kleshchin, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Happy Friday, everyone. This is The Takeout, relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Day Report next.